Hey guys, I just want to share with you really quick a couple little things that I have learned in making all of these granny squares and kind of show you how I work my way through this granny square pattern. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So you're going to start your magic circle. You're going to start your granny square with a magic circle. This is how I make my magic circle. And I'm ready to start chaining with my working yarn straight from here. Tells you you're going to chain 3, and then you're going to work 9 double crochets into the magic circle. One little tip is go ahead and tighten up that magic circle so it's not so big. It'll be a little easier for you to control. Okay, and then once you've got your 9 double crochets in this magic circle here, the chains at the beginning do count as a double crochet, so you'll have a total of 10 stitches all the way around. Now in my beginning classes, in my beginner crochet classes, I don't include the magic circle as what I would consider a beginner technique. So I do want to show some beginners out there, if the magic circle or the magic ring or whatever you've heard it called before is not something you're familiar with or something that you have actually worked with before and you're not comfortable, there is an alternative way to start your granny square. So I'll show you that now. And I will show you, I'm actually going to finish the granny square with that start, so then that way I can show you at the end how you would make it look really nice. So go ahead and leave a decent sized tail for you to be able to sew in. I would say maybe 2.5 inches, and go ahead and start your slip knot. So like most of your other beginner projects, you're going to start with a slip knot on your hook, and you're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you're going to skip 3 chains and into the 4th chain, so skip 1, 2, 3, and into this first one down here. You are going to place your 9 double crochets all into this same chain stitch, which sounds like a lot, but it'll kind of stretch out a little bit for you, and you will be able to do it. So that the 3 chains that you skip in the beginning counts as your first stitch. So there's 1, 2, 3. I've got 3 already. I need to have a total of 10 altogether, including those chains. So there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. It's always a great idea to go ahead and stop at this point and just double count and make sure that you have 10 stitches. I can't tell you how many times I'll be working my way along on a granny square. I get to this section where you're ready to put your corners in, and I don't have enough of my spaces around because at some point, either in the first or second round, I didn't put enough stitches. So always double check. I do anyway. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. There's 10, that's exactly what I want, and I'm ready to go ahead and I'm ready to slip to the top of my turning chain to join. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into the top of my turning chain there, and I'm going to go ahead at this point and cut my working yarn. I'm going to pull up my second color, and at this point in the game, this is my last square, so I'm really just choosing whatever yarn I have the most of at this point. All of my squares are really random and colorful. I have a total, I think, of like 20 colors going, so it's very much a scrap jacket, a jacket of many colors. All right, So your slip stitch, the stitch that you actually are going to slip all the way through your beginning chain and your last loop on your hook from your very last stitch of round 1 is going to be your new color. So you pop that slip knot on your hook, and this slip stitch that you're about to do is going to be made with your second color. There we go. And as you see, it finishes round 1 really nice and clean, and then round 2 starts nice and neat with this second color. So I'm going to go ahead, turn my work so that the back of it is facing me, and kind of set it down here on my workspace. One tip I want to share with you is to, some people don't like to do this. They don't like to have knots in their work. I, on the other hand, don't mind a knot, especially when I'm working with such thin yarn. I'm working with sport weight yarn, so it's a tiny little thing, and it's easy to cover up, and I know my jacket is secure and I don't have to worry about it. So what I've done there is I've just taken the tails of my yarn, not my first beginning tail, but my ending tail of round 1 and my beginning tail of round 2, and I am just tying a little double knot right there. I've made sure that my work is nice and close to my hook, and I have just made a little double knot. So and for round 2, I'm about to just cover that all the way up, so I don't really need to stress about it. Nobody will ever see it. Okay. So it is a little fiddly for these first couple of rounds, but be patient with yourself. I promise you will have plenty of practice. By the end of it, you'll be making these things in your sleep, because you have to make 70 of them. So for round 2, you are going to slip stitch into the same stitch as your join. So if you look here, it's kind of hard to see with all these tails in the way. Try to make it as clear as possible for you. I'm going to go ahead and just slip stitch here. What I'm doing by slip stitching on the wrong side, with the wrong side facing me, is I'm just getting my yarn going in the right direction. I think it makes a nice clean start to your next round. And I've got some tension on this. I'm holding it out of my way, and I'm not letting it be loose and sloppy right here. So I'm ready to start round 2 with a chain 2, and then a double crochet into the same stitch as your join. Into the same stitch you just slip stitched in, put a double crochet. And then, so there's 2 double crochets in the same stitch right there. And so you are just going to do that all the way around. So your first chain counts as a stitch. So there's 1, 2. You're going to end up with a total of 20 stitches around at the end of this row, or at the end of this round. So I'm going to just right here into that very next stitch, work 2 double crochets. Okay. Another double crochet, another 2 double crochets into the very next stitch. So we are going to take the 10 stitches we originally started with, we are going to increase it to 20 stitches all the way around by putting 2 stitches in every stitch all the way around. And I will continue to work over my tails, because there's no sense in really cutting it. You can't see it. And all cutting it is going to do is possibly make it, you know, less secure, I guess. So you might as well just work your way all the way down, unless they get in the way. If they're in the way, chop them off. But I just like to cover them all the way up. It just adds a little bit of stability to my granny square, I guess. So I will go ahead and finish round 2 off camera, and then we will meet back here to join. So I've got all 20 of my stitches all the way around. Go ahead and cut your second color, grab your third color, go ahead and flip this guy, go ahead, got my slip knot. Okay, I'm going to reach into the top of my turning chain and put my slip knot with my new color on, pull up my new color, and again tie my tails together to secure. So to begin round 3, you're going to go ahead and with the wrong side facing you, go ahead and slip stitch so you can get the yarn going in the right direction. And then you are going to chain 2 and then chain 1 more. So chain a total of 3 at the beginning of round 3. And for round 3, we are actually going to be working not in this stitch, but in the space in between our stitches from row 2 or from round 2. So go ahead and place a double crochet in this space in between the next 2 stitches. And then you're going to chain 1. So the first 3 chains count as a double crochet chain 1. Then you put a double crochet chain 1, and you are going to double crochet, chain 1, and in between every stitch all the way around. So at the end of round 3, you're going to have a total of 20 chain 1 spaces. Again, I'm not working in the stitch up here, I'm working in between the stitches from round 2. And that gives you a nice, a nice little spindly look. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this round 3 off camera, and we will meet back here to join. And I'm at the point where I have one last double crochet to work here in between these last 2 stitches. And I went ahead and just chained 1, so I double crochet, chain 1, and for the last time I'm going to double crochet. And this is super important. Make sure that you don't forget that last chain 1, because you want to make sure you have 20 chain 1 spaces all the way around, right? So here's the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ooh, try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and then once I join here, that last chain 1 I just made will be the 20th. Okay, so I'm just going to reach inside here and pull up my new color and attach my new color, and I will be ready to start round 4. So we're ready to go ahead and begin round 4. I've already attached my new yarn and tied my tails together. I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch into the same stitch that my yarn is coming from, just to get my working yarn going in the right direction, and I'm going to chain 2 like always. And for this round, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, in this very first chain 1 space here, I'm going to work 2 double crochets together. So start a double crochet and stop. Don't finish it. Don't yarn over and pull through these last 2 loops. Start another double crochet before you finish it. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops on your hook. You should have 3 loops on your hook at this point. You'll yarn over and pull through all 3. So you just double crocheted 2 together plus your chain 1. So this is your first cluster. Then you're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then I'm going to again work over my tails, cover these up. I'm going to work in every chain 1 space. I'm going to put a double crochet 3 together cluster. So yarn over into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. You're going to repeat that 2 more times. Into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Second time, yarn over into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and there's my 3rd time. So this time you should have 4 loops on your hook, and from this point forward, at this point you should have 4 loops on your hook. The only time you'll have 3 is for this very first one, because that chain 2 at the beginning counts as a stitch. But anyways, you have all 4 loops, you're ready to yarn over, pull through all 4, and then chain 2. Then you are going to just continue putting a chain or a double crochet 3 together cluster separated by a chain 2 in every single one of these chain 1 spaces. So I will go ahead and finish this round off camera, and we will meet back here to join. go. Yep, and we'll meet back here to join. Okay, so I'm gonna show you a little bit before the join here because I want to show you a little technique that I had been doing that helps hide the trail of your working yarn that you see here. You can just kind of like pull it tight and it'll lay nice at the top of it, and really you can't see that when you have your garment on. But if that's bothering you, one thing that you can do is you can work your double crochet 3 together clusters over top of it. So I'm putting my hook, see, I'm kind of catching that tail and I'm covering it even more. Oops, I forgot to yarn over, sorry. And I'm covering it even more here. Yarn over through 2, into the stitch, yarn over through 2, and see how I've just kind of scooped it up here. So that's another option if you'd like another way to kind of cover up that tail. So I'm at the spot where I'm going to place my very last cluster here. And it's super important to remember, just like the previous row, you had to remember that last chain 1 at the end. You have to remember the last chain 2 at the end of this round. So for round 4, don't forget that last chain 2 at the end. And then you're going to slip stitch to the top of your chain to join and pull up your new color just like you were doing before. Round 5 will be the last color before your border color. For me in this jacket, my bordering color is cream, so for round 5 you're going to go ahead and pull up your new color and slip stitch in the same stitch as your join to start your yarn in the right direction. Chain 2 and place 2 double crochet into the same stitch as your join. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 half double crochets in the same stitch as your join. Yarn over, go into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on your hook at the same time. That is a half double crochet. So I remember it by basically you do all of the steps of a double crochet, yarn over into the stitch, pull up a loop, and then you're going to yarn over, but you're just going to pull through all 3 loops on your hook instead of 2 yarn over 2 the way a double. So you kind of just do half the steps. So into the first and second chain 2 space, you are going to place 3 half double crochets. Well, the first one you're going to put 2 half double crochets, and your chain at the beginning is going to count as a stitch. So there's 3 there, there's 3 there, and into this third chain 2 space right here, you're going to work your first corner. To do a corner, you're going to do 3 half double crochets into the same stitch. You're going to chain 2, and I kind of like turn my work a little bit so that it's kind of started it going in the right direction here. And into that same stitch that you've already, into the same chain 2 space that you've already worked 3 half doubles, you're going to work another 3 half doubles after you've made a chain 2. And that chain 2 is going to kind of give you like a little point there. Okay? So you should have something that looks like that. And then in the next 4 chain 2 spaces, you're gonna do 3 half double crochet clusters, and then into the 5th space here, you're gonna place a corner. And so you're gonna do four clusters and then a corner, 4 clusters and a corner, and then you will do 2 more clusters and join here for your 4 on this side. So you're going to take your circle and turn it into a square. So again, let's just go over a half double really quick. Yarn over into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. And you are going to do a cluster of 3 of those in every chain 2 space around. Well, in the next 4 chain 2 spaces, and then you're going to place a corner. I'll show you one more time that corner, and then I will finish this round off camera, and we will be ready for our border. look and see. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now, this fifth one, we are going to 2, 3, chain 2, and then 1, 2, 3, into that same stitch there. So cluster, chain 2, cluster, and there's your corner. And then you'll do 4 clusters, and then a corner, 4 clusters, corner, and then we will meet back here for the join. Here we are at the end of round 5, and I am ready to put my very last corner here, and then that's going to leave these 2 spaces for me to put my last 2 clusters to make my 4 for this edge piece. So one more time I'll show you how I put my corner in here. 3 half doubles, chain 2, and then 3 more half doubles in the same space. There we go. There's my corner. And then in these last 2 chain 2 spaces, you're going to put your last 2 half double crochet clusters. And then that is going to give you a total of 4 half double crochets for this 4 half double crochet clusters in between your 2 corners here. And now's a good time to just check around your work, make sure it's all looking right. So there's 4 in between these 2, here's these 2, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, perfect. These 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, that's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. Just be safe, check. I do it seriously for like every square because I've learned my lesson by now. If you don't, the first time I don't, I miss something up and I have to frog, and it's so frustrating. And you're ready to go ahead and pull up your bordering color. So starting with a slip knot on your hook as you have for all of the other rounds. I do want to note really quickly, this is a side note here, I am using a double strand for my border color just because the material that I have to work with on hand is super thin. This yarn is probably a fingering weight, and so I wanted to give it a little bit more bulk, and so I doubled it up. I had plenty of it and I wasn't worried about running out, so but yeah, you don't have to work with a double strand on your last bordering color. That's just because of the situation I'm in that I'm doing that. Again, tying just a little double knot here in my tails for my own paranoid security. And I'm just going to slip stitch in the space in between my clusters from the previous round and chain 2 with my working yarn to start my border. So that first chain 2 counts as my very first double crochet. We're going to put 2 more double crochet in that same space. And again, I'm working in the space in between my clusters from the previous row. I'm not working, you shouldn't have been putting any chain spaces anywhere, so you shouldn't be working into any chains, just working into the space in between those clusters with a double crochet. Okay, and you're just going to place 3 double crochets in every space in between your 2 clusters, so until you get to this chain 2 space here where your corner is. So there's my second cluster. third cluster. And here I am at my chain space. That's the next space here for me to work into. And I'm going to put another corner here, but instead of half double crochets with the chain 2 space in between this time, I'm going to be doing double crochets because that is the stitch we are using for our border. There's 1 double crochet, there's 2 double crochet, 3 double crochet, okay, chain 2, 1, 2, and I kind of turn my work here, so I'm kind of heading in the right direction, and I'm just working over my tails. And here I'm going to place another 3 double crochet into this same corner chain 2 space from the previous row, and so you should have something that looks like that. So your what was a circle should be very squarish by this point, and it should have the same number of spaces and corners all the way around, just like a pretty little square. And so you're just going to continue in that way, putting a double crochet cluster in between all of your half double crochet clusters and putting a corner in every corner all the way around until you have made it to your first set of double crochets here that you've made. I got a situation going on. Let's fix that. Hold please. And here we are just cruising right along here, and we are at our next corner. And I just want to show that corner to you one more time again. It's very similar to the previous round, except this time we're working double crochets. So place 3 double crochet into the chain 2 space from the previous round's corner, chain 2, and another 3 double crochet right back into that same exact space. And there's your corner. And then you're ready to go back to your straight row for the other side. And so you'll go ahead and you will put 3 double crochet, put your corner, 3 double crochet clusters, put your corner, and then we will meet back here for this round and I'll show you how to finish up. Once you've worked your last corner here, you're ready to go ahead and you should have 2 more spaces left for double crochet clusters. So I have 2 spaces left, which is an awesome sign that everything is working out just the way it's supposed to. I'm going to go ahead and put, sorry about that. There we go. Got a little thread hooking in my way back here. I don't know what that's about. Anyway. There's 1, and I need to put 1 more. At this stage in the game, you can kind of incorporate that carrying thread from the previous row if you want, and it just kind of helps hide it a little more. Okay, so that's my last double crochet cluster for this round. There we have it. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut my yarn, pull up my hook, and you see I haven't attached there yet. Oh, I had one out. What did I do with it? There it is. Your darning needle. So you're going to use your darning needle to go ahead and sew up your square here and finish this round. So I go ahead and I just stitch this together. This way, I think it gives it a nice finish rather than slip stitching that very last round. I like to kind of just weave it in like a ton of different directions. Again, this might be total overkill, but I just really don't want all of my work to go to waste because my jacket's falling apart. That would be so frustrating. It is so frustrating. It is happening to my other one, and I don't know why. I'm guessing that the weight of the acrylic yarn has something to do with it hanging on my body. Like I said, I'm using sport weight yarn right now, and I'm using wool, which is a lot lighter than acrylic, I feel like. I could be totally wrong on that. Could be like a scientific fact that I just screwed up, but I think that as far as in ounces and weight, wool is lighter than plastic or acrylic. Anyway, so I've gone ahead and I've sewn that in really, really well. Not only is the tail hidden, but it's secure in that spot. It's probably the most secure part of my entire square. Now, because I started with my chain 2, I want to make sure that I do a good job sewing in, or because I started with that chain 4 at the very beginning, I want to make sure I do a good job sewing in my beginning tail. So I'm just kind of going along these stitches here and kind of just going in this round, going around this circle here, just right in the stitch, and I'm going to actually cinch that circle up with this yarn. And now I'm going to, in lots of different directions, sew it all the way in. Because again, I don't want this to come undone in any way. I'll be so sad. Sew it all the way in. Probably again overkill, but I just want to be sure. Snip it close, but not too close because I've made that mistake also. All right, and at this point, you might notice that it's kind of wavy on the edges. You can block your squares if you want to. That would probably give you a nice finish to your jacket. I don't find that it's super necessary. You can put it all together and then block the whole jacket together. That's probably just as efficient. So I'm just going to trim up these little tails here and make sure everything is nice and neat and clean and looks pretty. Now, there's a right side and there's a wrong side. Oh, good thing I flipped it. Look, there's a tail. And here's another tail. I'm going to trim those short because I know that I've worked it, at least from here, it's covered all the way. So I can trim it pretty short and it'll be okay. It's not going to pull out. Okay, so this is the wrong side. It doesn't have, you're looking at the back of your very last row. You want to be looking at the front of your very last row. And you can tell what the front is because it has a nice, pretty braided, almost like edge to it. And the wrong side is going to look a little loopy and a kind of nuts. Right side, wrong side. So you're going to need to know that when you are ready to stitch up your squares. Okay, so we're just going to go right along here. I'm going to show you the technique that I use to actually join my granny squares together. So what you're going to find in the pattern is it's going to tell you to put the right sides of your squares together. So again, find that nice pretty braided chain-like edge and you're going to make them face each other. So kind of sandwich them. Now this is not pretty and it will be in your finished piece, but it'll be on the inside, so it doesn't matter. You don't need to stress about it. So go ahead and take your hook, and with your bordering color, you are going to use some chain stitches and some slip stitches to join your granny squares together. So I've got a slip knot with my bordering color here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to go into that chain 2 space at the very leftmost corner of my granny squares here. And I'm going to pop that slip knot on my hook and I'm going to draw up my yarn. Oops. So drawing up my yarn here. Okay. And I am going to chain 1. I'm going to leave this tail out, and this is one tail that I'm absolutely going to sew in really well. And when I sew it in, I'm actually going to sew it around the intersection of my squares, and I'll show you what that means in a little bit. But what I want you to do is you've got your bordering color attached, you've chained 1, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to chain 3. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3. You're going to skip your 3 double crochet cluster and making sure that you are going under both of your squares. So there's one, you want to go through both of your squares. Go ahead and slip stitch to kind of squish those and like lock those in together. And then you are again going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then you're gonna slip stitch going under both squares, slip stitch those squares together. Okay, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Skipping these next 3 double crochets on both squares, going under both squares, slip stitching the squares together. I find that this way of joining your squares is super time effective. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to work over that tail for this row as well. It doesn't take a lot of time to join your granny squares in this way, and the seam that it makes is pretty low profile and not super like bumpy or uncomfortable. It doesn't add a lot of like girth or weight to the project. Okay, so here I am at the corner where I am ready to add another set of 2 granny squares. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be attaching a long strip of side-by-side granny squares, okay? So again, I am just going to grab 2 more random squares. I'm gonna just open it up here and lay them next to each other and make sure I like the way that they, like all 4 look together. That's a lot of yellow together. Let me try this. That's good. See how this blue and this blue are the same in the same spot? I don't like that. This is all just totally preference at this point. Let's do taking too long to do this. Let's do this. There we go. Nope, see, this one and that one are the same. See, I only struggle when I think about it too much. Try to be as random as possible. That's what I try. Bingo. That'll do, donkey. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and I like the way they all 4 look. I have the right sides together here, okay? I am ready to slip stitch into my corner space here. I've slip stitched here, okay? And I don't want to chain anything between this corner and that corner, and that's gonna form what I call an intersection. I don't know what else to call it, but this portion of it is going to be super important that it's nice and strong and secure, and it doesn't add any spacing between your rows. So you're gonna go ahead and, without chaining at all, slip stitch directly, making sure you're going under both of your granny squares. Here I am slip stitching here. Slip stitch, okay? And then you're gonna chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. You're gonna skip these 3 double crochets and slip stitch here, making sure, again, you've gone under both of your squares just like before. And that's that. You are just going to chain and slip stitch your way all the way along until you have attached as many granny squares as that panel, is what the pattern is going to refer to them as many granny squares as that panel is asking you to attach. So yeah, that's that. That's how I actually seam and stitch up the jacket. That's what the pattern is going to refer to it as, seaming. If you have another way of joining granny squares, that is absolutely fine. you can totally do that if you think you have a more secure way. Actually share it with me. Like I said, I'm totally self-taught, so it'd be kind of cool to learn. And here I am ready to slip stitch into my corner. I'm not going to chain anything. Just make sure that I like these together. Don't love that. That's better. Well, I'm going to go ahead and, again, my right sides are facing each other. I've lined up my next square here. And I'm just going to, without chaining anything, go under both of my granny squares in the corner here. Pull up my new yarn. And I've got quite a bit of tension on here. See how I'm scooching it really close? I mean, I am holding that so it doesn't go anywhere. And now I'm gonna pull it straight through. And see how nice and tight and close that intersection is? Nice. 1, 2, and 3. Skip this 3 doubles, slip under both. Yep. And that's how you attach your granny squares.